The first major visit weekend of June produced a lot of love at first sight commitments. When you know, you know. And 3 prospects were feeling the love for Penn State. We'll tell you a lot more about their new additions coming up. Plus, Notre Dame came away with a commitment and then some. Tom Loy joins us with a complete breakdown. And we'll hit all the major commitments, including a big one. Literally just dropping hours ago. All that and more as the college football recruiting show starts right now. Alongside Blair Angulo, I'm Emily Proud. A reminder to submit some questions in the chat. It is already popping. Everybody is excited for today's show. Only way you can do that is by subscribing to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Also, please like this video so we know that you're watching. Blair, a big recruiting weekend means a big recruiting show.
It's a huge month in the recruiting world. Before commitments come the visits, and we're about to get into a lot of the activity from this past weekend.
Speaking of commitments, a Monday afternoon decision. 4-star edge Cameron Fountain just committed to USC a couple of minutes ago. He picked the Trojans over Tennessee and South Carolina. It's now USC's second commitment of the day after Dakota Fields. So how did the Trojans both get better and fill a need?
A West Coast appeal there for the Georgia product, an impressive edge rusher, a top 50 player nationally. Emily, we wondered how spread out Lincoln Riley's recruiting would be once he settled into LA. Well, Fountain gives USC 7 commitments from 6 different states.
Ooh, interesting stat there. Meanwhile, Arizona hosted 5-star Elijah Rushing, and he came away impressed. He actually told you, Blair, that the Wildcats' message to him was, quote, be a hometown hero. So how did Rushing respond to that sell?
I'm not sure Jetfish has to sell anything else other than being a hometown hero. He responded well. I think Arizona put its best foot forward. Rushing has a brother on the team that's already also giving the Wildcats a nice little boost there, but it's still early for him. He's still set to visit Notre Dame, Oregon, and Tennessee in the official visit process.
Ain't over yet. Meanwhile, Penn State adding a trio of commitments to its 2024 class. 4-star safety DeJuan Lane and 3-star Xavier Gillum and Derek Plaz. The Nittany Lions now have 17 commits in their number 6 ranked class. So how did this class get better over the weekend?
James Franklin went shopping over the weekend. Emily, Penn State got one of the best safeties in America in Lane, a long and projectable offensive tackle in Plaz, and a developmental piece in edge rusher Gilliam. So a really nice haul for the Nittany Lions, who continue to roll in this cycle.
3-star defensive lineman Sean Sevillano picked Notre Dame right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel on Friday. Best part of that was when he thanked the people who didn't believe in him. Love the shout out to the haters. With it, the Irish jumped Ohio State to 3rd in the 24 team rankings with 17 players in this class. So what does he add to Marcus Freeman's group?
A plugger defensive tackle with tremendous agility and production. Sevillano is strong and physical. He does a great job to disrupt plays up front. A really good addition for the Irish, who can now pair him with big-time defensive lineman Bryce Young in this class.
More on the number 3 class in the nation with our friend Tom Loy a little bit later in the show. But we have a crystal ball alert. Director of Recruiting Steve Wiltfong put in a crystal ball for 5-star Sammy Brown in favor of Clemson. With that, time now for the Wiltfong Whip Around with our Director of Recruiting, Steve Wiltfong, the man behind the crystal balls. Sticking with Sammy Brown, sounds like it was a successful weekend in Death Valley, but he still has a few officials to go, including the in-state team in Georgia. So what has you feeling so good about Clemson's prospects following the weekend?
Well, talking to Sammy after his official visit to Clemson, I think that he was able to bond with a lot of the commits that Clemson had on campus and a lot of their top targets. And I think he felt like those guys were similar in his personality, and he's hit it off with guys on the team. And I think that just a lot of things, I think that, the thing he said that stood out the most to him about his visit to Clemson this weekend was how much he has in common with the university. I like the way it's trended for Clemson coming out of the visit. Obviously, it's a school that he's been camping at since he's been in elementary school. He was the first prospect that Dabo Swinney and company offered in this 2024 recruiting cycle. And coming out of the official visit, I think all those reasons, Clemson is the team to beat.
Emily mentioned earlier, Steve, that Brown was one of just a few 5-stars on the Clemson campus this weekend. They hosted a trio of 5-star wide receivers in Brian Wesco, Cameron Coleman, and Mike Matthews. Coming out of the trip, Steve, what did you hear from those three about their time at Clemson?
Well, I think that they're in terrific position for all those guys right now. You know, Mike Matthews is a guy that's had Clemson near the top of his list his entire cycle, loves the track record, loves the potential that he could play on both sides of the football there. And I talked to his mom afterwards, and she talked about the team culture and the coaching staff and called Coach Swinney a marvel. And so it's a targeted and strategic program that moves with purpose. And they recruit the best of the best, have a battle-tested blueprint for success on and off the field. They change boys to men and give them a great college experience. And I think that all those guys felt that. I know Wesco had a terrific visit. I think Clemson's been a front runner alongside TCU and some others for him. And then Cam Coleman, that's going to be a bit of a marathon, I think, but Clemson certainly has impressed a couple times he's been there on campus. Another receiver that I like Clemson for, I logged the 24/7 Sports Crystal Ball today for them, is TJ Moore. He's a top 100 recruit for us on 24/7 Sports. Similar to Sammy Brown, he loved hanging out with guys that could be his potential future teammates. I think he fit in, liked the way he fit in with them, talked about the receipts that they have at the receiver position with guys in the league, talked about all their players graduating. So I think that they're for TJ Moore. And then one more 5-star bonus nugget, Blair, Edric Houston. I think Clemson and Ohio State are in the Clemson made a big impression. He's got an upcoming official to Georgia. It was at USC. Ohio State's in the middle of that one, and Clemson did an awesome job this weekend.
Yeah, Steve, I remember talking to you on Thursday about the uniqueness surrounding what Dabo Swinney does in June and inviting all of the big-time prospects at week one, but it sounds like he has set quite a high bar for the rest of these visits coming up in the rest of the month of June. Let's go to USC. They've received a few commitments from some top targets coming off the weekend, but other visitors that they are still watching include the top running back in the nation in Taylor Tatum, and then the top 247 tight end Walter Matthews. So where do things stand with those two right now?
Yeah, so Taylor Tatum told me that USC set the bar. Obviously, they're having as big a weekend as anybody had coming off the prospects they had campus and the hit rate that they're having right now. But he said USC set the bar. Maybe it's just because of his first official, but it's his third time there. Has a great relationship with Coach Riley. Coach McDonald loves the offense, loves what USC brings off the field, and then also had a chance to meet with their baseball program. He's a dual sport athlete and got some good face time with the head baseball coach, and just loved everything he saw at USC. And I think coming into upcoming visits at Michigan and Oklahoma, USC has set the tone there. And then Walter Matthews, one of the most coveted tight ends in the country. He'd already been out to USC before, back on campus. He said his relationship with Coach Riley, there's no other school that comes close to that relationship he has with USC. I asked him if USC was the favorite right now, and he goes, maybe. I think that USC is very much in great position for Walter Matthews as he continues through his process.
Steve, we went behind the crystal ball on Sammy Brown to Clemson. You also put in a crystal ball for top 24/7 tight end Caleb Odom and the Alabama Crimson Tide. He just took an official visit out to Tuscaloosa. What has you leaning towards the Crimson Tide for the blue chip tight end?
Well, these are the easy crystal balls to put in Blair when he said Alabama definitely leads now. My crystal ball pulse of the recruitment. Alabama has set the tone going into upcoming officials to Penn State, Auburn, in Miami. He has a few other schools on his short list, but just everything about the program, he said, stands out and is what catches his eye. You know, he got to build some new relationships on the staff. He enjoyed sitting down with Coach Saban and talking about the program. And he just talked about how Coach Saban and everyone in the program cares about their players individually. They care about developing and doing nothing but becoming better in life every day. So Alabama, the team to beat right now for Caleb Odom. It'll be tough for these other programs and future official visits to surpass.
Elsewhere in the SEC, Georgia kicking off their slate of June official visit weekends, hosting some 5-stars, guys that they already have committed because they have almost all the 5-stars committed, like, Ellis Robinson, Peyton Woodward, but also hosting a few targets like Williams and Nwaneri, Justin Scott, and Ryan Wingo. So when it comes to the guys that they're still trying to land, what impression did the Dogs make on them this past weekend?
Well, Williams Nwaneri is as coveted a player as there is on the board for Georgia as they look for a stand-up pass rusher in this class. And Williams Nwaneri told me that he can see himself there. This was his second visit to Georgia. Georgia moving up the list as they battle Tennessee, Oklahoma, Oregon, Missouri, Texas A&M. He got to spend a lot of time with his host, Michael Williams, met with a lot of the recruits on campus. He goes, obviously they were national champions. You see how many D linemen they're putting out, edge rushers they're putting in the league. They're just a powerhouse in football right now. He talked about his relationship with Coach Chidera Uzo Deribe, said he could talk to him about anything. And he also really liked the coordinator Glenn Schumann and head coach Kirby Smart. So Georgia certainly making a big move with him this weekend. Justin Scott's been a recruitment that's had a lot of ebbs and flows in it. There was a time where I thought Notre Dame led. My crystal ball's on Miami right now. But this visit to Georgia, there are people that spent time with Justin Scott this weekend that think that the Dogs are the one to beat. And Georgia was kind of the school that slowed this process down. If you remember, guys, there was a time where we thought he was going to commit to Notre Dame, had a decision date, then Trey Scott goes up, watches him play basketball. They offer. Georgia's been trying to get him down to campus. They do this weekend. They blow it out of the water, and I think that Georgia's in excellent position for Justin Scott. And then a couple other guys on defense that I think that they're trending up for right now. New crystal ball for Justin Green, a top 247 defensive lineman from in-state. And I'm close to firing one in for top 247 linebacker Joseph Phillips out of Alabama. Obviously, we have Clemson trending for Sammy Brown right now. Joseph Phillips is another top target on the board for Georgia at the position as they try and add to DeMarcus Riddick, who took his official visit this weekend. And then Ryan Wingo, the crystal ball is on Georgia for him. He took a recent visit to Tennessee that definitely Tennessee has led a lot of the time in this recruitment too. But talking to Ryan and talking to his dad said that Georgia continues to feel like home for him, and this place is going to continue to win. They continue to be a school at the top of his list going into upcoming officials to Michigan and Texas. He's got several other contenders, A&M, Tennessee, of course. Missouri's getting an official later this month. So Ryan Wingo, I expect this recruitment to go on, but Georgia, Tennessee, very much in great position for him right now.
Busy weekend, but Steve, you are all over it. Thank you for breaking it all down for us. You can read more of his work on 247sports.com. And for even more exclusive information, you can become a VIP member today. We are running a sale on annual memberships. You see it there, 60% off or $1. Just $1 for your first month, and this will run through June 15th. South Bend, Indiana saw a major talent infusion this weekend, and Marcus Freeman did his best to make sure it was not just a temporary bump. Notre Dame hosting a handful of official visitors and its annual Irish Invasion Camp. I got to hear more about that. So let's welcome in our friend Tom Loy of Irish Illustrated here with us now to break down a big weekend, bringing a little island flair with that shirt. I love it. Tom, let's start with some of those officials. You put in a crystal ball for a couple of 24 targets, 4-star running back Kendron Young and 3-star safety Paul Menke. So what has you leaning Notre Dame with those two?
Yeah, I mean, I feel good at this point with Kendron Young. It seems like Notre Dame's moving in that direction to try to get that one done. They already have a really good running back committed in Aeneas Williams. He's been a long-time top guy for Dylan McCullough, so they're trying to pair those two. There's some other top contenders. I mean, Baylor, Texas A&M, they're all pushing hard. He's fresh off his official visit. I know he's got a great relationship with the staff. He is a tremendous talent, equally strong academically. I mean, this kid is a do-it-all kid on the field and off the field. So tremendous young man. I can see why Marcus Freeman, Jared Parker, Dylan McCullough, all those guys are pushing so hard to land him. So right now, my crystal ball is on Notre Dame. I think they're going to get that one done. But again, like these other schools haven't given up. He's one of the best running backs in America, one of the top players in the state of Texas. So everybody's pushing hard to land him. And if Notre Dame can get it done, I mean, he's a tremendous talent. The other one I put in was for Paul Menke Jr., 4-star safety out of Schertz, Texas, Samuel Clemens High School. And And this is one that's been kind of intriguing. I know in terms of fit on and off the field, he's a tremendous fit for Notre Dame academically, and then on the field, he's just a really good football player that can do it all in the back end of the secondary. He's somebody that I think is one of the more underrated safeties in the country. I love what he brings to the table. So a lot to like there. What I'm watching moving forward with Menke is that, so my assumption was that he was going to shut it down after this visit. I thought that Notre Dame would be able to seal the deal, get it done, and then potentially land his commitment within the next week or two. And then obviously one school that I mentioned at Irish Illustrated was to watch was for Duke. Mike Elko's got a great staff there. So I'm trying to keep an eye and see if he'll visit Duke this weekend. My sources are saying that he is going to visit Durham and check out the Blue Devils and give them his full consideration. So at that point, honestly, all bets are off. So it's kind of one to really keep an eye on. If he does make that trip to Duke, I'm definitely less confident than he lands at Notre Dame. But again, the assumption was that he was going to take the visit to Notre Dame, shut it down at that point, and they'd be able to seal the deal. But I could very well flip this thing to Duke as soon as he steps on campus in Durham.
A little interesting nugget there from Tom Loy. Notre Dame, meanwhile, also hosted Gerby Lambert for his official visit. Back in November, Tom, you put in a crystal ball for the Irish after this official visit. How are you feeling about Notre Dame's chances with one of the top line prospects in this 2024 class?
Well, that was definitely a projection pick based on a couple sources that are very close to the situation there. But it's nice to see he finally made it to campus. And from all accounts, Notre Dame absolutely crushed this visit. I feel great about my pick right now. I do feel confident that Notre Dame is the favorite, is the leader. But I know he's got a big visit coming to Ohio State, so that's definitely a team to watch. There's definitely some others involved, whether it's Penn State, Michigan, a few others. But I do feel good about my crystal ball pick at this point. I know Notre Dame made him a big priority. Boubacar Traore is a former teammate of his at Notre Dame right now. So they're in a good spot. I feel great about the pick right now. But again, we're not done. This isn't, signing day. It's not the finish line. Notre Dame's doing all they can to close the deal. But I think offensive line coach Joe Rudolph did a really, really good job this weekend of really showing what Notre Dame's about. And Marcus Freeman's tough to say no to. So I know academically he's a fit. I know we've talked about this before, but academically he's a fit. Obviously on the field, you can make the argument that it's O-line U, especially with Joe Walton, Blake Fisher right around the corner. So I know that's very appealing to Lambert. So we'll see how it plays out. But I do think Notre Dame and Ohio State are battling it out. So I think we'll have a pretty good idea where things are trending in about a week or so.
A lot of great intel there, Tom. We literally have people who have tuned into the show just to watch you. We hope that you'll stick around, but somebody in the comments saying, I am here for Tom. We do appreciate that. People watching right now, too. We have less than half the amount of people watching have hit that like button. So all the Irish fans and all the fans of other college football teams, go ahead and hit it. Yeah, Tom's got the thumbs up. He knows the drill. So while Sean Sevillano was the only addition over the last few days, Irish fans, the ones in the chat, understandably, are keeping an eye out for commitments following these official visits. So who are maybe some other recruits who could pop for the Irish in the near future?
Yeah, they definitely have some big visits taking place. There's one that's currently occurring right now with one of the top prospects in the state of Indiana, Fort Wayne North Side safety, Bronte Johnson, a four-star talent that's really a four-star athlete because he's a really good football player all around. He can play safety, he can play receiver. This kid, he's also a great basketball player for that matter. But Notre Dame loves him at safety. They're pushing hard to get that one done. My crystal ball has been on Notre Dame for a while, and I think they're going to get it done. But Purdue, Tennessee, Indiana, there's a lot of schools still pushing. But I think that what separates them is that there's a lot of people close to Bronte that really believe he's a future day one, day two pick at the safety position compared to just being a really good college receiver. He can definitely be an NFL receiver, no question about it. But I think when we're talking about difference makers, a lot of people talk about Jesse Bates, who's from Fort Wayne, who's now in the league. Some people close to Bronte actually think he's even better at this stage than Jesse Bates was. So that's why they see him as a safety at the next level. Notre Dame loves him there. They see a difference maker. Chris O'Leary, the safeties coach at Notre Dame, has done a great job there. So they're going to try to close the deal. He leaves his visit on Tuesday. So in a perfect world for Notre Dame fans, within a week or so, he's actually committed. So we'll see what happens.
Tom, there were only a few uncommitted prospects in South Bend this past weekend for their official visit. And so when you fast forward maybe 6 months or so and you look back at this weekend and how big it was for the Fighting Irish, how do you think this weekend sets up for this 2024 cycle?
Yeah, if you include Bronte Johnson, that you had, who arrived on Sunday, with most of the guys leaving on Sunday, you had 5 guys on campus this weekend. And if I were really a betting man, like I said, I think Menke takes that visit to Duke, so it's going to make it a little dicey. But I think you're going to look back long term and look at this weekend as one of the biggest recruiting weekends of the cycle, really. I know a lot of people are looking ahead to next weekend when you got 5-star defensive end Elijah Rushing coming on campus, and you got Kingston Viliamu-Asa coming the following week, who's one of the top, if not the top linebacker in the country. So everybody's watching that. But I think when you look back and you talk about Kedron Young, who, like I said, I have landing at Notre Dame, Styles Prescott, the same, Gerby Lambert, the same, and then Bronte Johnson also landing at Notre Dame. I think you're going to look back and say, like, this was a difference maker weekend for Notre Dame, and really you got some really good players, some difference makers at variety of positions that actually matter for the future of Notre Dame, especially in the trenches. So I think you're going to look back and realize that this was a pretty massive weekend for the future of Notre Dame.
All right, our social team watching right now is already clipping that and sending it online. I know that is exactly what you're wanting to hear if you are a Fighting Irish fan. Okay, I mentioned the Irish invasion camp. I can't wait to learn a little bit more about that. You actually wrote about some prospects like 3-star receiver Derek Meadows and 4-star defensive back Ivan Taylor being 2 of the 2025 standouts from the weekend. So what did they do to impress you?
Yeah, Derek, I mean, I know Blair knows this. Derek Meadows is a tremendous talent. He was really, really good. I mean, it was really tough to pick a true alpha dog, but in the end, when I saw him and I hand timed him, a 4.50 flat in the 40, and he was moving. And then you look at him, and we're talking 6'6", 195 pounds, great catch radius, really good hands, and he actually runs really good routes. So there's just so much to like about him. He's going to win a lot of one-on-one matchups, and I expect him to have a really big season this year at Bishop Gorman. So he was my alpha dog, but right behind him was a class of 2024 defensive back safety, but also I think could play like a rover linebacker, and Anthony Robinson III. He really pushed hard, especially down the stretch. He was fine during the drills, and he looked good, and I know he was banged up, but man, when he started doing the one-on-one reps, that's where he really started to shine and cement himself. I think he took 5 or 6, and he did not lose a single one. So it was fun to watch him work. I see why Notre Dame offered, Ole Miss, Miami, a couple others. And then lastly, the one that I was really maybe most excited to see was Ivan Taylor, the son of Ike Taylor, the Pittsburgh Steelers great. I know Andrew Ivins, our director of scouting, is extremely high on this young man, and he really was, probably up until I really pushed back and watched all the film that I put together from Sunday, he was probably the alpha dog. And then I just couldn't stop raving about Derek Meadows. So Taylor was right there. Loved what I saw. I see why he's ranked so high by our national team. I mean, he really was a difference maker. He's a special talent in secondary. There's so much to like about him. Plus, he's got that dog mentality that everybody likes out of a cornerback. So fun to watch him. I know Mike Mickens, the cornerbacks coach at Notre Dame, was hip to hip with him for much of the camp. So it was fun to watch that. He's clearly going to be a major priority for Notre Dame and really every other school in America from the class of 2025.
All right, Tom, I got to ask you a question from the chat because, as I said, people are clamoring for it. So this one comes from Sean Nelson asking, will Notre Dame land some uncommitted defensive linemen in the class of 2024?
I'm sure they're probably asking particularly about Justin Scott, which everybody wants to know about. But, and then I'm sure Elijah Rushing as well. I definitely feel better about Justin Scott at this point. I know Steve Wilfong had jumped on there earlier and said that he was very close to committing to Notre Dame back in January. My crystal ball is still on Notre Dame. I haven't really found a reason to move it. I know everybody's talking about Miami and everybody wants to talk about Georgia, Ohio State, maybe in Michigan. But I just think in the end, this kid who's from Chicago, I know he connected really well with defensive line coach Al Washington. I know he loves Marcus Freeman. Mom is very pro Notre Dame. There's just a lot of things that make me think that he's a kid that's going to stay closer to home. And I know, again, Bulldogs fans, Hurricanes fans, very confident. And I know the staff is as well. But I just think when push comes to shove, he takes his official visit probably for the Notre Dame-Ohio State game. And if everything goes as well as expected, it honestly wouldn't surprise me if that could be the moment that he actually makes his decision. But long way to go. That's not till September. So, we'll see what happens. But again, my crystal ball still in Notre Dame.
All right. right. Sean, appreciate the question. Tom, thank you so much for the time. Make sure you are reading irishillustrated.com. That is a place to be. We mentioned the Irish invasion camp. Tom broke down some of the big prospects. He has a full story up right now on all the big-time prospects from the class of 2025 that were in attendance and all the intel. Again, he said he was anticipating a few more commitments to potentially come out of the big weekend. So be sure you are on irishillustrated.com for all things Notre Dame. With June official visits off and running, we understandably had quite a few commitments from across the country. So we're going to break down some 2024 and 2025 additions with 24/7 Sports national recruiting analyst Chris Singletary. Chris is joining the show now, and let's start on the West Coast. How about it? With 2024 three-star Hayden Tretter, the Colorado native, picked USC. So what are the Trojans getting in the massive 6'6", 300-pound lineman?
I think you just touched on it. Massive. You can never have enough size in the trenches. And the thing about Hayden is a guy that plays on the right side of the line in the interior, potentially could be a right tackle. You're getting a road area, a wide body, a guy that can get some guys moved up out of there to be able to help in the run game. A massive young man, does an excellent job with his bend, and somebody who can anchor down in pass protection. Also still has a lot of room to grow from a development and a technique standpoint. So I'm sure Tim Drevno and that staff is really excited about what they can do with him in terms of just really getting him to be the top flight offensive lineman that they want. But he has a lot of room to develop, the position versatility. But again, 6'6", 300 pounds, it's hard to find those guys, and they're not just walking around.
No, they are not. And if you see them walking around, you will definitely notice them. We have two national recruiting analysts on the show, so we're going to take advantage of having both these guys. Blair, I'm going to ask you about a school not far that you know pretty well, UCLA. Chip Kelly picked up a commitment from three-star linebacker Blake Tarabachi out of the Park City, Utah area. The Bruins now have 6 commitments in the 24 class, but who'd they just add?
Well, they added a Tabarachi to go along with what USC already has, and that's Carson Tabarachi. Carson's a tight end who used to play linebacker, transferred from Utah. Now Blake is following him to Los Angeles, but playing for the Bruins. They're both moving to the Big Ten. I'm sure the family is searching for those Big Ten connecting flights from Salt Lake City Airport. The Bruins are getting a really dynamic linebacker, a player that's still learning the position. He plays quarterback as well, but I think that helps him, and it helps his instincts as a defensive prospect. He's really long and has that build that gives you the, I think a way to look at him is he's still not a finished product, right? You think that he still has a lot of promising upside in terms of his physical makeup. A really productive player, a player that also rushes on the offensive side of the ball, so he knows, kind of where to feel out pressure and feel out the contact. So I think a well-rounded defender and a developmental project there that the UCLA can probably continue to get better once he focuses on defense full-time.
2 Tabarachis are better than 1. Chris, in the Northeast, we mentioned Penn State's newest additions, but its highest-ranked commitment over the weekend was from 4-star safety Dewan Lane. So what does the Baltimore product add to the Nittany Lions' now top 10 class?
He adds length. You're talking about a guy that's 6'2", 6'3 plus playing in the secondary. You're talking about size at 195 pounds. He's a 3-phase prospect, special teams, offense, defense. He's a guy that has the ability to play in the post as a safety, or even be able to be a factor down in the box, as you see on the clip here, and be able to be excellent with his eyes. He is real disciplined, and the thing that you see is he has tremendous ball production, whether it's on offense and defense. If the ball is in the air, he understands how to attack it to make plays. And then again, you can't teach his length. 6'3", 195 pounds, being able to be a factor not only in the pass game and the run game. You're talking about a young man that went 10-9-8 as a sophomore, is also on the 4x1 and 4x2 relay teams at his high school. And so you see size, you see length, you see athleticism, and you see more than enough speed. And so the people down in Happy Valley, I'm sure, are excited about adding him to the fold.
All right, Blair, we saw some action in the 2025 class as well. You got Alabama landing 4-star running back Anthony Rogers out of IMG Academy. He's currently the #1 back in the class. So what does Nick Saban get in this dynamic runner?
Well, he's got a player that's now nicknamed Turbo, so, score one and tally one up for Nick Saban. He's a big play, home run hitter type, a running back who can slash and dash his way to the end zone. Not very tall, but he's strong and powerful. He picks his holes and attacks lanes apart. He's the type of player, Chris, and I know you've seen them. He leaves a trail of rubber pellets on the synthetic turf whenever he runs. He's really electric, really dynamic. I love the way he runs the football, and the Fighting Irish clearly know a thing or two about exposing and maybe using some of these running backs that can be really productive.
So good to see Nick Saban finally land an electric running back in the recruiting game. It's just something you don't see very often. Go ahead and hit that like button if you have not already. Less than half the people that are watching right now have hit that like button. We can do way better with that ratio as we're about to say goodbye to our friend. But Chris, finally, Texas landing 2025 quarterback and 4-star KJ Lacey, the Alabama prospect, automatically becomes the face of that class. But on the field, what kind of player is he?
Over 3,000 yards, 40 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns rushing, only 5 turnovers. You're talking about a playmaker, a guy that can make plays within the pocket, also does an excellent job making throws off platform, always keeping his body in the right position. He has more than enough arm talent to stretch the field vertically, does an excellent job of layering the ball, and then to be able to go to the state of Alabama and get a guy like this who's a winner, led his team to the 6A state championship. You bring him behind Malik Murphy, Arch Manning, even Owens, who they have currently committed. And now you go into the state of Alabama and you bring KJ Lacey. And I'm sure there's another caveat there in terms of being able to still try to get his running mate at the receiver position and Owens to possibly flip and come with him. But you got a playmaker, a guy who fits the system. And I'm sure, and I know that Sark is excited to have him. He's not the biggest guy. And I'm sure from that standpoint, they'll be able to do some things to protect him with that tremendous offensive line that they have with the young guys that are developing down there in Austin. But you're talking about a young man that really can spin the ball and get it to his playmakers all over the field.
Looks like Texas has some great succession plans for their quarterback position over the next few years. Big ad there. Chris, thanks so much for joining us. Also, be sure you are listening to the 24/7 Sports Football Recruiting Podcast with our friends Andrew Ivins and Cooper Patagna. New episodes drop every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. You can listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Next 3 to 4 years, I'll be committed to the University of Michigan.
I'd like to commit to the University of Notre Dame.
Time now for our recruit of the weekend, and this week's pick is 3-star cornerback Vernon Woodward. He comes to us from Winter Park, Florida, but he's going to be playing his college ball far from there. Woodward making his commitment to Wisconsin on Sunday. He told Badger 24/7 that while he didn't anticipate committing following his visit this past weekend, when he got there, he said, quote, "It just felt right." Blair, it may have been an unexpected addition to Luke Fickell's 2024 class, but how big a pickup is this for the new head coach?
It's a really nice pickup, and you obviously go to the state of Florida to get speed and to get that athleticism, and that's exactly what Wisconsin is adding to their defense. It was a huge weekend for the Badgers. They had 16 official visitors. It's probably a smart recruiting strategy there to get that many players for the first weekend of June. It looked like a tremendous weekend of weather and fun by the lake, and that was a big appeal to Vernon Woodward, who probably felt at home like he was out at Florida. But a great moment for him. He didn't know he would be committing to Wisconsin while he was on campus. He ranks inside the top 75 among cornerbacks nationally. Also had scheduled an official visit to Illinois for later this month. That doesn't look like it will happen anymore. It looks like the Badgers are getting a really, really talented defensive back from the state of Florida. And so Luke Fickell going outside the region to get some athleticism and get some speed, you have to chalk that up as a huge win.
Very important to get those Big Ten visits in during the summer, especially when you get a kid coming in from Florida. I bet that weather felt perfect. No humidity, still got the lake. Things were much more tame for him, so exciting for him. Congratulations on being named our recruit of the weekend. We've got some questions here. I want to make sure that I get everybody's name right, and this is a tough one. This comes from MRH3535. Any thoughts on where 2024 4-star tight end Carter Nelson may end up?
Well, it looks like 3 schools have, in a way, separated themselves, and that would be Notre Dame, Georgia, And I think Bama is in there as well. Those schools have already locked in official visits for Carter Nelson. You know, this the number 2 rated tight end in the 2024 class. And it's a huge, huge moment for him to go out to Georgia this past weekend for an official visit as part of that marquee event in Athens. And, you know, when you are a tight end and when you're considering playing the position at the next level, Georgia seems always to kind of be in the mix and be in the conversation. Notre Dame obviously is a huge appeal as well. That's a program that does its share of developing the tight end position. And Nebraska, Alabama is the one I mentioned, but Nebraska is the other one that has the official visit. He will be headed out there at the end of the month. So that's an important in-state recruit there for Matt Rule and that staff. Those 3 schools right now look like they will have the first opportunity to make an impression on Carter Nelson.
Keyword. First, I guess 2 words. First opportunity. That's a question that we got somebody a little bit later I'm going to ask that I'm very excited about. But first, let's go in order as you asked them, because we are tracking these. Thomas Rockwood asking, where do you think 2024 athlete Boo Carter is leaning as his commitment on June 17th gets closer?
Yeah, it's 2 weeks away. The only crystal ball right now is for Tennessee, and what a big pickup that would be for the Volunteers to add another playmaker on the defensive side of the ball. You see him up there going up for an interception. He's a really dynamic defensive back who has a great feel for the position, can kind of scan the field and react. These are the types of players that Coach Josh Heupel and that staff need to continue adding on the defensive side of the ball. I think we all feel pretty good about what Tennessee is going to be able to do on offense. They've obviously got a former 5-star in Nico Iamaleava being able to lead that once he takes the reins. So I think the future looks really bright. The one question mark is, how are we going to keep other SEC programs off the board when we're lighting up the scoreboard? And I think a player like Boo Carter gives them that dynamic athlete in the back half of the secondary that can kind of neutralize things. So that's where the crystal ball is leaning right now for the Tennessee Volunteers.
Definitely a need there for Tennessee, as you broke down for us. A reminder that the only way you can ask us a question is in the chat, and the only way you can be in the chat is by subscribing to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. I highly recommend it. Again, we keep saying on all of these shows that June is a massive month for all of these official visitors, and you're totally missing out if you are not subscribed to the channel, because we are breaking down all the breaking news, all the headlines, everything on that channel. So be sure you are subscribed. And the chat's a fun place to be too. I'll just go ahead and tell you that. There's some questions that I do not ask, but I'm going to continue with the good questions that I will ask. And this one is an absolutely fantastic question, and I can't wait to get your thoughts on this. From Tyler C, asking, would you rather get the first official visit and have the chance to make that initial impact, or the last official visit and get that last opportunity? What do you think?
I think this is where coaches earn their paychecks, right? They have to get a real sense and a temperature on a certain recruitment. Do they feel like maybe the recruit will make a decision, the spur of the moment, and really get caught up on official visit? Well, sign him up for that first weekend of June or that last weekend of the month of May. Get him on that first flight to your college town and make sure that you are the first impression. If you feel like he's maybe dragging things out and wants to compare things, well, maybe you schedule him for later on in the process, right? If this is a player who keeps saying he wants to take his visits and he wants to get a feel for everything, well, you want to be able to have that last chance to make that pitch and to hear everything else that he has to say about the other schools that he visited, and then you can counter to that. So I think it really depends on the recruit, and it depends on where you feel like you stand, right? If you feel like you lead and you can close and you can get a commitment, get him on that first flight. If you feel like maybe you have some catching up to do, or you don't have a shot to really make an impression until later in the process after he sees other schools, then try to be that last final official visit. So a really interesting dynamic there. Maybe some coaches want to make an impression early on and kind of be the leader in the clubhouse, as Steve Wilfong has mentioned with a number of prospects. But there are other times where it backfires, right? Maybe you felt like you were going to get a recruit on campus later in the month, And oh, by the way, he just committed to the other school, canceled all his visits, and we have to move on to Plan B or Plan C. So that's why they pay these guys the big bucks. That's why they have to make the decisions, and they have to get a really good temperature check on every recruit.
Yeah, that's something that we mentioned with the first question that was asked, and canceling future official visits because of you feel it when you first step on campus for that early June official visit. This kind of reminds me of, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Blair, it reminds me a little bit of the hat science theory that we talk about sometimes. I mean, how much do we analyze the timing of these visits when it comes to trying to figure out where they're going to go?
Emily, you've heard this phrase a number of times. We call it follow the visits, right?
Yeah.
Follow where these recruits are going. And sometimes, especially closer to the early signing period, when these recruits are lining up visits to go to games or to take officials, or when they're hosting coaches on their own campuses or in home for those visits before signing, you always have to be that last one. You have to look at that last one. And yeah, there's certainly I think a method to it. There's certainly a formula to it to be able to figure out where a certain recruit might be leaning, or what you need to do to be able to make up ground or be able to close. Sometimes I think coaches schedule visitors thinking, hey, if we get him to commit that first weekend, and if he doesn't commit after the official, then we have to move on to our next guy. They have to kind of take their shot, right? They have to swing for the fences on that first trip. So there's definitely a strategy to it. I've heard a number of coaches before to try to get a recruit on campus early, get him to commit. If he doesn't, then you move on. So that's certainly one of the techniques that you have to apply sometimes when trying to jostle for position with these visits.
Another reminder, too, that it is just June. I can't tell you how many times I think I said on our signing day show in December and in February, he was committed here in June, but decommitted later during the fall. So these commitments are far from over, but it is definitely exciting to track. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today, for all of your great comments, for your likes. Go ahead and hit that like button on the way out. We do continue to track that. Once again, thank you so much. For Blair and Gulo, I'm Emily Proud, and this is the College Football Recruiting Show.